So welcome everybody. As Duke said, we're going to talk about transportation and emerging technology. So automated vehicles and electric vehicles that really have the chance to reshape our transportation networks. I'm Rusty Hefner, Chief Technologist with Booz Allen Hamilton. For those of you who aren't familiar with Booz Allen, we're a global management and technology consulting firm based in Washington, D.C., but with offices all along the I-10 corridor. For those of you who have heard of us, you probably know about our work in the defense and intelligence sectors, but we also work with most, if not all, of the federal civilian agencies, and increasingly they're asking us about climate and how it's going to impact their operations and how they'll adapt in the future. So my group mostly focuses on advanced technology. We assist agencies like the Department of Energy in thinking about what advanced energy and transportation tech is coming and what they should invest their R&D dollars in. And so this panel for me is super exciting because we're going to get into some of what's coming in the technologies and why it matters. Before we do that, I just want to put things in perspective because there's a lot happening on the I-10 corridor in transportation that makes it one of the most interesting places to observe. So there are 45 million people that live on and along the Tenacross region. They're traveling every day, and there are others, passengers, freight, who are moving through en route to somewhere else. So lots of things moving around. And the transportation network has some challenges. So if you look at cities in America where people drive the most, about a third of them are on or along the I-10. So we've built cities like Phoenix and Jacksonville and Baton Rouge that are fairly car dependent. And if you look at which Americans drive the most every year, it winds up being in some of those same cities, San Antonio, Jacksonville, here in Los Angeles. So we're spending a lot of time in our cars. That's not great for the climate. It's also not great for quality of life. So highway bottlenecks in the US, where is the worst congestion? Half of those bottlenecks are somewhere along the I-10 or on freeways that connect to the I-10, including here in LA, also in Houston, and Phoenix is up and coming quickly in that dubious ranking. So lots of congestion, lots of time in our cars. And I think maybe the most sobering statistic is some of us, when we make a trip in our vehicles, are not making it home. So the top 3 cities in the United States for highway fatalities, roadway fatalities, Houston, Los Angeles, and Phoenix. So we've got some real challenges in our transportation network, but opportunities as well. I think what's so exciting about Tenacross is, sure, we're having a transportation network that is strained, but we're also seeing lots of growth, and that's an opportunity. So some of the fastest growing cities in the US are along the I-10, and some of the fastest growing towns that will be tomorrow's cities, like Kyle, Texas, or Queens Creek, Arizona. You may not have been there, but these are places that haven't built their infrastructure fully yet. And so we have a chance to leverage emerging technology to make a better transportation system in the future. Let me introduce our 3 panelists, or give each of them a chance to introduce themselves. But I just want to mention, we kind of have a dream team here, 3 really different perspectives, and that was intentional. So Virginia Lingham is Director of Mobility Technologies at ICF, and we knew we needed someone who could talk to the roadway network and the challenges of introducing new technologies at a state DOT and really transforming the roadway network. And so that person is Virginia. Virginia, why don't I give you a couple of minutes to introduce yourself and tell us more about your background.
Sure, thanks, Rusty. Like Rusty mentioned, I'm Director of Mobility Technology at ICF. I'm located just south of here in San Diego, and it's an honor to be here today with you all. So I'm representing a project that I've been working on for the past year plus with FHWA to develop a national strategy for roadway digital infrastructure. And in that digital infrastructure, one of our on-ramps, if you will, are these transcontinental corridors. So I-10, I-80, I-5, I-95, really looking at that scale in order to deploy a national roadway digital infrastructure and looking at like the business models of what that really means, what we can get to, really the results that we can see when we remove those frictions between private sector partners, public sector agencies, and the providers that are out there that are trying to sell their services and goods and provide that service layer that is oh so important once you actually have that layer and trying to connect to the customers. So that's one of the things I'm here representing on this panel today. Also, I'm a long-term advocate for regionalism within Transportation Research Board. I'm a member of the Regional Transportation Systems Management and Operations Committee, and we look at research needs and try to implement solutions or come up with solutions and share best practices to promote regionalism at the mega region level as well as within cities, within metros. So really all about getting people to work better together and to collaborate. So happy to be here today. Thanks, Rusty.
Yeah, thanks, Virginia. And we'll definitely talk about regional planning and how we do a better job of not just building roads, but building whole systems. To Virginia's left is Vishay Nihilani from Waymo. We can't talk about new technologies in the transport sector without talking about automated vehicles, and Waymo is a leader there. So Vishay, really excited to have you here. I'll give you a few minutes to introduce yourself.
Thank you for having me. Really grateful for the opportunity to be here and speak to all of you. My name is Vishay Nihilani. I'm a director of product management at Waymo. Waymo is an alphabet company that, our mission is really to improve roadway safety and to increase access to transportation. And we're doing that through the deployment of fully autonomous driving technology. We have deployments in San Francisco, Phoenix, Los Angeles, and we're expanding further and further, and we're at a really exciting place in our company's life cycle where we're now very eagerly bringing that technology and product to market and seeing the benefits of autonomous technology in our societies in these various cities that we're operating in. My responsibility is to focus on operations and infrastructure. I'm very sort of excited to scale up the product, reduce the cost of that product, and sort of increase its pervasiveness in those cities, as I mentioned.
Thanks, Vishay. We're definitely going to ask you about scaling and customer adoption. So that's coming up. I think a mistake that we make when we talk about transportation is we talk about planes, trains, and automobiles and the infrastructure that they run on. What we forget is people are traveling for a reason. They're going somewhere, to school, to work, to see friends, and how we lay out our cities and our suburbs then determines where people want to go and how they get there. And so I'd like to introduce Ryan Johnson, who's founder and CEO of Cul-de-sac. What's so important about having Ryan on the panel is that he can give us perspective on the built environment, on land use, and how that determines then what our transportation network needs to look like. So welcome, Ryan.
Thanks. And yeah, when Duke talked about this conference, I thought maybe I'd be on the housing panel, but when he said it would be the transportation panel, I said, that's even more exciting because real estate and transportation work closely together. And when there's innovations in transportation, real estate evolves. So Cul-de-sac builds walkable mixed-use neighborhoods. And our first project is called Cul-de-sac Tempe. And it's open today. I live there, and there's 80 residents. It's about 1.5 miles from ASU. And the residents don't own private cars, and instead they use a portfolio of mobility options, including AV ride-hail, Lyft, electric bikes, and it's right on the light rail. And because we don't need to build parking for all the residents, we get to build something wonderful, and I hope you get to visit one day. Actually, has anybody here visited before? got a few people, that's great. We get to build something with 55% landscape space, and we have lots of retail and pavers, and this was something that was hard to do. When we started 5 years ago, people said, you guys, I don't know what you're doing, how are you gonna get the permission, how are you gonna get the demand? But we worked with the city of Tempe, and they were wonderful, and now it's thriving, and the demand is there going really well. And we talk about the I-10, and so many of these cities are very sprawling. Before cul-de-sac, I was on the founding team of Open Door, which in my opinion has the best data in real estate. And we saw in the data, and we heard from customer after customer that they want to live in walkable neighborhoods, but we've stopped building them, but we can again, and that's what cul-de-sac is doing.
Excellent. Let's jump into the technology first, and we'll come back to shaping communities. Shay, can I ask you to orient us a bit? Today, you can go to Phoenix, use your phone, hail a ride share that does not have a driver, right? Where is that technology? Where is it going? And what are the changes you see as a result of it getting deployed?
Yeah, Rusty, you're exactly right. I mean, as a public user, you can fly into the Phoenix airport. If you have the app on your phone, which you can download, sort of it's available in all of the app stores. You can hail a ride, and that car will come to pick you up without a driver at the SkyTrade terminal in Phoenix. And from there, you can drive around to anywhere within, I want to say, 225 square miles of the Phoenix area. So you basically have full access to the majority of that Phoenix metro area. I think that really speaks to where we're taking the company, right? I've been at Waymo for about 6 years now, and when I joined, we were focused on a lot of core technology challenges. Still really trying to perfect the technology, and now we're at a point where we really feel that it's ready for mass deployment. I mean, we have reached a point where we believe that every Waymo car we add onto the road is creating a safer, more reliable form of transportation for the consumers that have access to it. And so we're really excited to sort of scale that up and expand access to technology within the cities that we're operating in today. As I said, those are Phoenix today, San Francisco, LA is expanding, and we're going to keep marching on to additional cities as time goes on over the next couple of years.
So does that mean I don't need to own a car in the future, that I just call one?
Certainly the dream. I think that, right now, I think our first deployment is through ride hailing. So I think that's, today ride hailing is sort of one option among many different transportation options. I think there's an opportunity for autonomy in a variety of different modalities of transportation, from ride hailing to personal car ownership to public transit. And really what we're focused on is about bringing that autonomy to these different forms of transportation. Whether or not that will sort of replace car ownership altogether, I think is still TBD. It's still pretty early in the game to sort of make that call. But I certainly think that it's going to get safer and more accessible.
Yeah, and there have been experts that are thinking a little further out, 20, 30 years, if automated vehicles go mainstream, how does that change our cities? For example, do we need as much parking? Or can your car drop you off and then go somewhere else and park itself? What are thoughts from the three of you? I mean, is this where we're going? That we certainly built a lot to accommodate the automobile, particularly in our metro areas. How's that going to change?
Sure, I'll chime in. There was actually a webinar yesterday where the different modal agencies were getting together talking about truck parking. So truck parking along I-10, for example, there's capacity problems, and there's safety issues. I think I heard somebody from Caltrans or Calsta say that there were 1,600 crashes where just vehicles running into trucks that were parked illegally on the side of the road because they couldn't park safely in a truck parking facility. And if we can just reduce that by providing truck parking facilities and truck parking information systems to get people to the spaces where there is availability, just say along I-10 corridor, to get between those distribution hubs and the multimodal facilities to the ports. Just building that connectivity will improve safety. But with automation, that may change. Like there may not be as much of a need for drivers. It may turn into a hub-to-hub kind of model where the self-driving trucks, like that are running in Texas, like 10 plus companies are running self-driving trucks in Texas right now. What if they just need to drop off the vehicle at a hub, which used to be a truck parking facility, and then that gets picked up by a different trucking company that is able to do that local delivery or the last mile for that, for those goods. So, when we're talking about parking, don't forget about truck parking, and there's a big initiative right now to improve and to focus on truck parking along the interstates.
Can you tell us a bit more? There's connectivity and then there's automation. They can go together, but they don't have to, right, Virginia?
That's right, they don't have to. Like self-driving trucks right now, for example, typically are running on their own systems. So they're independent. They don't want those external inputs often. But as an infrastructure owner-operator, from that perspective, they want to provide information to the distribution hubs, to the drivers, to let them know about backups, to let them know about rerouting needs, to let them know about work zone information, like that a lane is dropping. I was talking with somebody at this company, Aurora, and it's really hard for them to change lanes, and so it takes a lot. Like their software requires a lot of just space, and so a car typically will not give them the space that they need, so they're just sitting there with their turn signal on. But if they know that that lane is going to be closed further up, then they can get over a little bit easier and make that change. So that's the type of connectivity that would be helpful to support both everyday drivers as well as automation in the future, or even today.
Ryan, part of cul-de-sac today is that people who live in the community have access to rideshare. Do you see automated rideshare changing that, and if so, how?
Yeah, AV ride hail changes things. It's going to be the most disruptive technology in real estate in decades. It's going to bring the price point down significantly, where almost everyone is going to be able to not have a car and get around for a lower cost than they can today. We've made our cities way too expensive, and even without AV ride hail, many people's commute patterns work such that they can even now save money. A lot of people just haven't done the math, and getting people to do the math is one of our hardest marketing challenges.
Is provide, especially with the ride-hailing deployment, where we know that personally owned cars are typically utilized only 5% of the time, which means that the other 95% of the time they need space to be parked. And I think as AV ride-hailing grows and grows, I think we'll have the opportunity to create more livable cities, more communities like the communities that Ryan is creating with his company, Cul-de-sac, where they're more walkable, they're more intimate, and more of the space can be utilized more efficiently.
I mean, there's an interesting equity angle here. A criticism of advanced technology like vehicle automation is, wow, this is really expensive tech. It's only going to be accessible to drivers that can afford double or more of what a car costs today. What the two of you are saying kind of turns that on its head, that actually this new technology reduces the cost of travel. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. This is going to make everyone's transportation expenses go down substantially. And the sort of assumption that, everybody needs to own a private car is part of, we become car brained in the US, and we just assume that everybody needs a private car, everybody needs a road. We also assume parking is free, the roads aren't priced. There's so many solutions today that can work well, and AV ride hail happens to hit a bunch of buttons where it can work without major changes to culture, and that's why it's special as a technology.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And I think, in addition to lowering the cost of transportation, I think it'll lower the cost of real estate as well, as we can utilize more real estate more effectively, both within cities, but as AVs really become pervasive and are able to drive and be more effective in rural environments, I think we'll increase connectivity and we'll increase the amount of value that we can derive from the land that's not necessarily in sort of urban centers. And I think we'll see a little bit more of a peanut buttering of the distribution of people, of economic activity, as we build out infrastructure across some of those more rural areas.
And I'll just add, don't forget about the cost of congestion and the cost of not operating our transportation network efficiently. If we really work on those system how we're managing the system and how it's being operated, we can really meaningfully reduce those costs to transportation at the local level, like the person level, people for traveling, as well as overall effects of goods and services.
What sort of risks do the three of you see? There was a study a few years ago called the chauffeur study, and the idea was to experiment to see if you gave households cheap, more or less unlimited mobility, what did they do with it? And it turned out that they traveled a lot because the cost was very low. They didn't give them automated vehicles because the technology wasn't quite there yet, but they gave them a chauffeur and a car that took them wherever they wanted to go for a week. It was a pretty great deal. If they do another one, I would suggest that you sign up as a participant. But there is some risk here, right? That if we make mobility cheaper, are we going to wind up right back where we are today with a strained transportation network? And how do we avoid that?
We avoid that by building many more walkable neighborhoods. And already it's gone from people being very skeptical of cul-de-sac to now we've become the reference project for how to do it. And because it's succeeding, real estate's a very stodgy industry. They always look at benchmarks and comps, and everyone's noticing, and you're going to see a lot more walkable neighborhoods. And also we're expanding as well. And that's enabled because of technologies like this.
I don't have too much to add. I would think it's a real problem. It's something that we need to address. I know this summer I had access to a cruise vehicle in San Francisco, and I just ran around town because it was free and I could use it, and I just wanted to test it in different environments to see how it worked. And it worked better in some than others, but I had access to that. It's venture capital funded, sort of. It's free. People are going to abuse it, so there has to be policies in place to manage that. We can't just let everybody, we can't have this congestion where just more and more vehicles are on the road. We need to provide meaningful alternatives like walkable communities that create low cost and desirable ways to get around besides just personal cars.
I would also say that we, agree with the idea that we need to have, more alternatives. We need a little bit more planning for what the world is going to look like in that case. But I think it's important not to lose sight of, yes, in the beginning, if a company gives out free rides, people will take free rides and maybe they'll joyride, and the sort of value of that is more entertainment value. But I think that transportation provides a lot of other values, right? It allows us to be more connected to each other, increases the economic value that we're capable of producing. And in that sense, I think that induced demand is a very good thing, actually. It shows that, it increases the amount of productivity, the amount of opportunities that people have. In certain cities, people are limited to what education they get access to based on what public transportation is available to them. And that public transportation network is a little bit, sometimes takes longer to plan for and longer to develop and longer to expand, whereas there is an extensive road network that we can make use of. And so I think there's a lot of very positive opportunities that come out of having induced demand, but I do think, to your point, yes, it's possible that there will be more cars on the road, or possible that there will be more congestion, and we do need to solve for those things. One of the ways Waymo is trying to address that is by making sure that our fleet is totally electric, so that as we expand, the emissions are lower, the noise pollution is lower, and generally kind of pushing forward to a better efficient frontier of what transportation can provide.
There's going to be a lot more cars on the road potentially, but there's also going to be a lot more bikes on the road. And I think we're going to see an alliance between bike riders and AV ride hail, because it's just obvious how much safer it makes biking. And there's a lot of latent demand for bikes that, as there's less danger on the road, you'll see a lot more people traveling that way.
Can we talk about safety? I mean, that's certainly everybody wants to get to their destination without incident. But the roadway fatalities and injuries in the US are pretty high right now. How do these technologies help?
Well, for Waymo, that's an easy one. We are very focused on reducing roadway fatalities. That is our mission. That is the imperative that motivates our company, right? I mean, I think it's, sometimes people ask about the dystopia of what happens when there's all this congestion on the road. I in some sense, think that we're living in a dystopia now where we accept that every year 1 million+ people pass away on the roads. These are members of our community. These are people that we know, our families, our teachers, our friends that are impacted by this. And I think that, for us, that's something that is one of our core values, that we want to be deploying this technology in a way that's safe and provably safer than the alternative, which is human-driven transportation. I think it's definitely an important thing to focus on and make sure that as we're deploying, we're always demonstrating that the technology is the safest possible option. And I think that, to Ryan's point, will increase the trust in the system and will allow for other opportunities for transportation, like cycling and walking, honestly.
I think with the national roadway digital infrastructure strategy, safety is really core to that. By providing information to vehicles, to drivers, by just sharing information, just like truck parking, for example, or having enterprise data solutions, sharing work zone information. By providing and sharing that information in a standardized way, the end goal is really to improve safety on their roadways. That's goal number one. Additionally, there's V2X, like vehicle to anything initiatives that could really affect the crashes, like minimize crashes, make it so that, I dream of a day where we don't have any more fender benders, and we have the technology available now. Just if cars would stop crashing into each other and stop crashing into my friends on motorcycles and bikes and stop running red lights. Like, that's the goal for my career, and it's possible. We can do it now, and V2X solutions and a national roadway digital infrastructure is part of the way of how we do that.
What's interesting as I listen to your comments is, Virginia, you've got experience working with federal, state, and local agencies to get new technologies on the road, to do things like improve safety. Our other two panelists have private sector solutions, right? It seems to me that in transportation, we often look to policies first, but there's also an important role for private sector solutions and technologies to develop in the private sector. Can the three of you talk about how do those two things work together? I think we need both, is that right?
Yeah, I guess I'll kick it off. We definitely need both, and I've been involved with a lot of collaboration lately. There's not going to be a national policy. There's going to be national guidance, and there will be platforms that are developed so that we can collaborate more easily, to share information, to have industry lead initiatives when it comes to innovation, and then have public agencies follow and support and really build from that work that industry is doing. So there's going to be a lot more public-private partnerships, a lot more collaboration in order to get this done. One of the avenues that I'm seeing this happen is through standards development and other specification development. Like the work zone data exchange is one example that's being led by FHWA. And there are companies like Icone or HosAlert who have been involved with that specification development. And now it's kind of catching on. Like different public agencies and cities and counties are putting their information in that data format, and then it's being accepted by applications and getting out to customers. So with that collaboration, we can really see big results.
In our business, where we need to get approval to go where we go, and we're showing cities that if they take the risk and allow for building walkable neighborhoods, they're actually well loved. They're loved even more than a regular neighborhood. And so some of the concerns about traffic, et cetera, it's actually something where just embrace a walkable neighborhood. There's a number of different departments, and so we had to work closely with the fire department, sanitation, et cetera. But now we hope that we've shown that this public-private collaboration can lead to innovation in housing.
Ryan, were there barriers? For example, parking requirements can be a real barrier if there are local zoning requirements, right? That can stand in the way of building the kind of community that you are building.
Yeah, this gets to people don't prefer sprawl. We've largely legislated sprawl to be mandatory. Tempe actually had to pass special legislation, and it passed unanimously to allow us to build without residential parking. Wow. And there was this huge feedback loop that led to more sprawl. But we're starting to see the early signs of that reversing, and I think it's going to be quite powerful.
Shay, did you want to add anything on this topic?
Well, in our industry, obviously, public-private partnerships are critical. We want to deploy our technology with the trust of the communities that we operate in. That means, doing so in a way where we have the right permits to operate, where we are in compliance with the local rules and regulations, local, state, federal, so on and so forth. And Waymo has a pretty healthy relationship with the regulators and the sort of public sector that's involved in our deployments. And I think we expect to continue that. I think it's really critical for us to ensure that we, like I said, have the trust of the communities that we're operating in, and have the opportunity to prove our track record where we operate. And so definitely an area for us to continue building a healthy dialogue.
Yeah, in your case, you've been able to experiment on public roadways, but in close coordination with local authorities.
That's right. So, typical permitting processes, or typical deployment processes, we start out with driver operations, so that we're operating our cars where the software is driving the vehicles, but there is an autonomous specialist there who can sort of supervise and take over instantly for any reason. And in that way, we gain huge amounts of real-world experience, in addition to the experience that we gain through simulation. We have something like 25,000 cars operating in simulation 24/7. We've had that for 6 to 7 years now, accruing something like billions and billions of miles of simulated driving. We have, I want to say, tens of millions of miles accrued on public roads with an autonomous specialist. And then only after we've sort of validated that driving, ensured that we comply with the local rules and regulations, do we actually deploy to fully autonomous or rider-only configurations. And there, we've accrued over 5 million miles driving on public roads. And so that's the kind of incremental approach that we think sort of buys us trust with the communities that we operate in.
Hey, Rusty, I don't normally do this, but I wanted to ask a question because of who you've got on the stage. Virginia mentioned trucking, and I know you're interested in transcontinental roadways. And Waymo, to some extent, has gotten into trucking, Waymo Via. And the 10 has become something of a laboratory for autonomous trucking. Do you want to speak to the idea that we're now only going to see Waymo vehicles, which are outside my office every day with nobody behind the wheel? And we've just gotten used to that. A semi going down the road with nobody behind the wheel, which would seem to be a little more fraught. But anyway, and parked trucking will eventually have to change, and it'll change cities. Do you want to speak to that scale of autonomous vehicles?
Sure. I've done some work in that area with AV trucking, just kind of evaluating where things are at. It's hard to say if the market is ready for that, but the technology continues to be tested and continues to advance, and we'll see where the market goes. In Texas, their policies and their regulations are in place to allow the self-driving trucks, the AV trucks, to run on the road. And they're out there collecting data, running loads all the time, every day, hundreds of thousands of miles, every week or something. So they're collecting that data, they're improving their software, and it's just happening. They have a regular driver as well as like a software, like safety person in the vehicle at all times right now. So it's possible. It's very possible to have that on the road. I think the challenge is that you still need a driver when you get off of the road at this time. So I think like getting to those last mile deliveries or into the distribution hub. Although in Arlington, Texas, there is a huge initiative. Like there is big economic development initiative with Hillwood that is developing a distribution hub. It has an airport. There's education around there with the community colleges. The companies are there. And so things like that are models to follow. If you want to be successful and you want to leverage those innovations, those models are one to look at and maybe replicate across the corridor. And then also maybe like sharing information, and being able to know that information is consistent along all these corridors. Like when they're going from El Paso to Dallas, making sure that the work zone information, the weather information, the traffic information is all there to support those AV trucks, to make them reliable and to make them consistent. I think all of that is going to be needed to like blend it all together to make it successful. But it's happening, and we'll see what happens with the market. But I think if places like Alliance, Texas, and things like that really take off. It has a lot of potential. But it is, one challenge though is that it's state by state. The regulations are not consistent across the states. And so that is something that is being worked on. You know, like they can't run in California. I'm not sure about Arizona, maybe Arizona. But they, for now, as far as I know, they stay within Texas.
Technology-wise, I would say that it's all coming. I think that there was a phase where maybe the deployment of the technology was happening a little bit slower than people would have expected, or that honestly, than even I expected when I joined in 2017. But now I think we're at a point where we're seeing the compounding effects of various different pieces of technology come together to accelerate the roadmap in really interesting ways. So what I mean by that is, we were operating on one platform in Phoenix and Chandler, Arizona, actually. Then we built a new driving platform that the first market where we deployed that was San Francisco, and we saw how quickly that product generalized to downtown Phoenix, which is much more complex driving than Chandler, now to LA, where it's been very quick to get the product up and running. And I think as we expand to freeways, we'll see something similar where the incremental effort to bring that feature online will be lower and lower in terms of a product development process. And I think then the leap to trucking is not going to be so significant. I mean, I don't want to downplay it too much, but I think that idea that all of these different technologies come together and all of a sudden many things have been totally transformed, I think is very feasible. It's something that's going to happen in the next few years, I want to say.
And there is a driver shortage. So the driver shortage is real, and it's something that needs to be addressed, and perhaps self-driving trucks can help support that.
So I'd like to invite the audience to follow Duke's lead and pose some of your own questions if you'd like. Feel free to step to the mics. In the meantime, I'm going to ask the panel one last question from me, which is, are customers ready for this technology? Are they ready for electric vehicles, and are they ready for automated vehicles, and are they ready for new communities that are more walkable?
I can start. I mean, I'd say absolutely yes. We have seen incredible adoption of Waymo's ride-hailing service in Phoenix. I mean, in 2023 alone, we've provided over 700,000 fully driverless, fully autonomous rides to passengers. And that's only limited, I think, by the scale that we've put the cars out as opposed to the customer demand. So I think that's a super exciting proof point. And I think, I'm excited to see where that's going to go in the next couple of years, but I expect it's going to be only up from there.
I would say it needs to be designed so that they just need it and they want it. So it's not a choice. It's just something that pops up that's helpful, that has very strong usability, great design, and then it'll be accepted. If they have a choice to turn it on and off, or if it's annoyingly designed and it's not usable, it doesn't really serve their needs, then they're going to reject it, they're going to turn it off, and it's not going to be safe. It needs to be designed well, it needs to be integrated, and it should be seamless from a user perspective.
Yeah, those things in the good design, I might be biased, but I think cul-de-sac has those. And we've put together a package of a lifestyle, and we've shown that people love it today. And in their world, of these 80 residents, everybody's car free, and it's normalized in their world, and it reinforces it. They share tips and tricks. That's not the norm yet, but one thing that everyone can do over the holidays is show their relatives, especially their older relatives that should drive less, show them how to use Lyft, show them how to use Waymo. Already many people can replace a lot of car trips today.